So it's been a really strange day for gaming, which, I guess has kind of been a theme for this year. On one side, a lot of people woke up to a very exciting game announcement. I know I'm personally very excited about this, and this very well could be one of the first big Nintendo Switch 2 titles because it is something that could potentially be a system seller for them. On the other side of things, though, we have PlayStation, and unfortunately, Sony is the latest company to be hit by mass layoffs. They sadly just axed 900 jobs, and unfortunately, this does include a studio closure as well as several canceled projects on top of that. So this is a significant announcement in multiple ways, in which we will cover today. We'll go over what's happening, why it's happening, as well as Sony's response, which comes off as a little bit concerning to a degree, but what they said does detail their next steps in order to prevent future struggles. So let's just go and jump right into this. There's a lot to cover here, and we might as well just go and start off with that studio closure. PlayStation's London studio has officially been shuttered, and this isn't necessarily a studio that everybody will immediately recognize, but it was, however, a studio with a lot of talent and also a studio that had a lot of potential. The last game that they made was Blood and Truth, and at the time of its release, it was advertised as a true AAA virtual reality experience, which was pretty special at that time because we don't really see that many VR titles with the same amount of production value and polish that we got in Blood and Truth. And in my opinion, it is one of the better VR experiences to this day. It kind of plays out like your typical action film, and it was just a lot of fun to play. If anything else, you can clearly see their talent on full display, and that was kind of the hope for their next game. We were hoping to see them take that next step on the PlayStation 5. They had already announced that they were working on a more traditional PS5 game. It was not a VR2 title, and they described it as an action cooperative experience set in a fantasy UK. So it does kind of sound like it might have been another live service title, and if that was the case, you can kind of chalk this up as another live service game that has struggled under the PlayStation umbrella. When you really look at it, outside of Helldivers 2, Sony's live service pivot has not been all that smooth. They've canceled multiple projects in the last couple years, and now they've also shut down a first-party studio that seemingly was working on another live service title, and this is a studio that's been under them since 2002. It's just an unfortunate and even frustrating situation, but this was not the only game that was impacted today. Reportedly, several games have been canceled, which also includes the new Twisted Metal title, which, if you noticed, ding ding ding, was another live service project. Yeah, you're probably starting to notice a theme by this point. Late last year, of course, Sony canceled Factions 2. I know a lot of people were very excited about that game. They just canceled their cooperative London studio game and shut down that studio. And now their live service Twisted Metal project has also been canceled as well. See, I think Jim Ryan's original plan with the pivot to live service was to heavily invest into several different projects. That way they could have a lot of different opportunities for a few to stick. Realistically, I doubt if they were expecting every single one of those games to be a resounding success. But the problem here is that right now it seems like they're not even getting those opportunities because they're struggling to even get these games out the door. Like I said, their live service pivot has just not been smooth. And this pivot has also majorly hurt PlayStation's productivity. Theoretically, they could have used those resources to make other games. And that doesn't necessarily mean AAA games either, but they could have used that money to bring back fan favorites like Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper as two such examples. A lot of people have been wondering why they haven't been making more AA games this generation, and maybe that's because a lot of that budget is going towards these live service titles, and when you look at what's been happening, it comes off as wasted money. Speaking of AAA games, though, that has been a massive topic in the last few months, and after today, I believe this conversation is only going to get bigger from here on out because it's become crystal clear that AAA budgets are out of control. We all saw the Insomniac League last year, and I think that opened up a lot of people's eyes. They spent more than $300 million making Spider-Man 2, which is frankly outrageous and possibly even irresponsible. Just to kind of put that into perspective, Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4 cost them around $100 million. So Spider-Man 2, which is located in the same city, sure, they expanded and everything, but it was more than triple the budget as the PlayStation 4 title just last generation. And I'll just ask you this much. Did that increased budget actually make for a better overall game? Because I think that's very debatable. I'll let you be the judge of that. But the reason that we're talking about this today is because these layoffs, once again, have brought up the question about these ballooning budgets. Insomniac, Naughty Dog, and Guerrilla Games, three of their biggest studios, were all impacted by layoffs. And this does have some people wondering about those rising budgets. Even Sony themselves recently suggested that this is a problem. So this is something that they need to work on, and it does sound like they very much currently are. PlayStation's Herman Hulse did respond to the layoffs today by saying, delivering the immersive, narrative-driven stories that PlayStation Studios is known for at the quality bar that we aspire to requires a reevaluation of how we operate. Delivering and sustaining social online experiences, allowing PlayStation gamers to explore our worlds in different ways, as well as launching games on additional devices such as PC and mobile, requires a different approach and different resources. So if it wasn't already clear enough, PlayStation absolutely is going through some internal changes right now. They're reevaluating how they operate on a business level. And I imagine part of that is them tackling this budget problem head on. And I mean, they do need to do that. They need to address this issue because right now, this does not come off as sustainable. They're not making enough profit. Now, one way they can make more money, though, is by expanding to more platforms, hence them also bringing up PC and mobile. Do expect them to make a big push into those platforms over the next 10 years. Let me say something else, though, real quick. The rising cost for game development is not necessarily exclusive to Sony. Other companies are dealing with similar issues as well. Sony, yes, is at the forefront of this discussion simply because their emphasis on AAA games, but that doesn't necessarily mean that other companies aren't having similar issues as well with their AAA game development. Out of all of the big companies, Nintendo's really the only one that comes to mind that seemingly has this situation under control because they don't really rely on those type of games in the same way. They focus a lot more on timeless art style and gameplay, whereas these other companies are putting a lot more money into all of these other different things. And it is something that needs to be addressed going forward. That way, core gaming will have a more secure future. They need to find a way to make these type of games more sustainable. That means lower budgets and also shortening the development time. That does go hand in hand. And anymore, I mean, we're seeing AAA games take 5, 6, 7, or even more years than that to make. It's just too long and it costs too much. It's just a very tough situation. And the game industry, I don't know. It just feels like they're at a little bit of a crossroads right now. They've kind of put themselves in this situation, but how do they get themselves out? But for the time being, it's just sad seeing the industry go through something like this. There's been so many layoffs in the last few years, and it's something that I hate talking about every single time. I don't like talking about layoffs, but it's kind of become a common reality in the last few years. Companies overhired a few years ago, and now that they haven't seen the growth that they want to, they're scaling back quite significantly. Let me know what you all think about this entire situation now. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. All right, so let's go talk about Nintendo, though, because there was a little but also significant showcase this morning. It is Pokemon Day after all, which means that we got a new Pokemon Presents. And while the Black and White remake rumor didn't exactly pan out, we did, however, get an announcement that, in my opinion, is far more exciting. They confirmed a new Pokemon Legend entry being Pokemon Legend ZA, and it is set to release sometime in 2025. More on that here in just a moment. But for me personally, I believe that Pokemon Legends Arceus was actually the best Pokemon game this generation. That could have been Scarlet and Violet if it wasn't for all of its issues, but Legends Arceus was a fresh new take on the Pokemon series, and most importantly, it was good. So Game Freak is taking that formula, or at least a part of it, and they're making another entry. But this time, it's set in the XY region, which for me is great because XY is actually one of my own personal favorites. It's definitely in my top 3, if anything else. The new trailer, though, doesn't exactly reveal too much. It's only a teaser for now, but they did describe it as an ambitious new entry that takes place entirely in Lumiose City. That is rather interesting because that almost kind of makes it sound like it will be an open world style of game, kind of similar to something like GTA, but with Pokemon. Legends Arceus, of course, that game used zones, and then the town was kind of like this hub world, but ZA does sound different in that aspect, or at least in how they're currently describing it. I'd like to get some confirmation on that before assuming too much, though, but being located in the city, I kind of wonder if they're going to put a little bit more emphasis on battling this time. That was really my only complaint about Arceus. The trainer battles was a lot of fun, and it could even offer a challenge at times, but it just didn't really have enough of that. And I do kind of wonder if they're going to maybe change that in ZA. For the time being, though, I am thrilled to say that Mega Evolutions are returning. In my opinion, Megas are awesome. They're just so much cooler than all the other gimmicks that they've added since then. I didn't really care for the Gigantamax stuff, and I'm definitely not a big fan of the Crystal Pokemon. I don't know. Truthfully, I just wish they would go back to Megas outright instead of all this other stuff, but at least we will get Megas in ZA, and I imagine this will include a few new Mega Evolutions as well. 2025, though, this is really interesting for two different reasons. One is that we're not getting a big new Pokemon game in 2024 like a lot of people assumed. That could indicate that they're taking the criticism seriously and they're taking more time to make a better overall game. I hope that's the case here, but not only that, this could also suggest a Switch 2 release, and that would be massive if true. If Pokemon Legends ZA launches for the Switch 2 in its first year, that right away is a true system seller, especially if it turns out to be good. For that matter, this could be one of the reasons Nintendo reportedly internally delayed the Switch 2 if all of that is true. Let me hear what you all think about Pokemon Legends ZA, though. Are you excited about what they showed today or not? Okay, moving on, though, we do have one other thing to talk about because it sounds like a new Bravely Default announcement is incoming in 2024. This is coming directly from Team Asano, and you can see here. They said, Default 2's 3rd anniversary celebration. Many messages will be sent during the year-end and New Year project. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be able to tell you some developments in the Bravely series this year, so please keep an eye out for it. Asano P. So, I mean, if you like JRPGs, this is actually pretty exciting stuff. To this day, the first Bravely Default in the 3DS is still one of my favorites within the genre. So I am curious to see what they have planned next. Back in late 2021, they did say this. Bravely Default 2 was well received by fans, and as a result, we're hoping to continue the series as we feel we can pull it off once again. With that said, we're still in the planning phase, and I suspect development will take another 3 to 4 years, so we'd appreciate it if fans can bear with us. So this is not the first time that we've heard that a new Bravely Default could be on the way. But with that development time, I almost kind of wonder if Team Asano is also maybe planning a remaster for the first two 3DS titles. We've seen a lot of 3DS remasters here recently, and Bravely Default does kind of make sense with some of the features that doesn't really work perfectly anymore. I mean, I'm just speculating, of course, but either way, I'm all ears for whatever they have to announce. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. Again, let me hear your thoughts on the PlayStation situation below. But until next time, peace out.